Hello and welcome to this week's Virtual Office Hours with UM's Learning Platforms Team. We are Bill Vilberg, Brett Stevens, Rick Ramos, and Michael Baldano. This week's agenda, will be going over using announcements productively with Bill. Just a quick introduction to using the Collaborate interface. A couple of things to point out. We have the audio and video panel, the participants panel, the chat panel, and the content area. And in the audio video panel, we have sliders for the mic and audio volumes. And here are the toggle buttons. Click once to turn it on, click again and turn it off. You have talk and video and a preview button for your video. And that concludes our introduction to using the Collaborate interface. We'll go ahead and move on to using announcements productively with Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Brett. The announcement area is one of the first areas that was part of Blackboard, and it still happens to be a very important part that a lot of people don't take full advantage of. The first thing that people seem to do with Blackboard is use it to store files, PowerPoints and things like that, and to send email. But I really want to talk about the announcements section because it's a vital part of it. It can really help enhance your course and engage your students. There are 4 general types of announcements. The first one is, remember, something is going to happen. A test is coming up, an assignment is due, some activities, I've changed my expectations as to what you have to do or how big something has to be, how many words or pages. The course policy may have changed, especially here in Florida where we have hurricanes and lose some class days. Things might change. So some of those are just remember, here's what the policy is, not changes. These are just things to remember. And these are usually questions that students ask in class, in person. But by putting it on the announcements, it gets it out to everybody. The second one is the change. I, the instructor, have changed something, and I need to announce that to the class. At the beginning of the class, I put out a syllabus, and the students look at that, and it says in it that the syllabus might change, but where do I put the changes? And one way of dealing with that is put it in the announcements. I changed a due date on a paper. I moved a test back a week. I changed the requirements for a paper or for a project. I changed my expectations of, I said that I would always respond within 24 hours to any email, and I need to clarify that because I'm going to be out of town or something. So if I change something, I want to let the students know about it, and I put it into the announcements. Third use for announcements. A lot of people don't do this, but this is really an effective technique to use for announcements, and that's feedback. These are the you were statements. You were really good in class last week. I really enjoyed the questions that were asked. The class did a great job on the test. That kind of thing, just feedback to the students. In general, positive feedback tends to be most effective in this case, but if there are problems, this is a place to bring it up. Some students did real good on the last project, some were weaker, and you might want to look into it. If you didn't get an A or B, sit down and come in with me or something like that. So feedback, just general feedback to the class, great thing to put in the announcements. Third thing for the announcements, you might. These are all of the recommendations or comments or other things that you want to share with your class. You might be interested in watching this TV show. It's kind of related to the class. Remember, if you're a senior, you have to get your application in by this date. Remember, there's well, those are probably remembers, but you might. You might be interested in this, you might not. It's up to you. In general, faculty who use UMIT and think of it as I want you to shouldn't say you might. They should say I want you to and find a way of giving a pointer to, because that's what drives students. They're there to learn, but they're also there to be graded, to be assessed by you. And if something is important, they expect it to come toward the assessment. So the you mights, where you might want to do this and you might want to do this, most students looked at me when I would do that and didn't say it, but I could see in their eyes, I might not want to do that, because I've got a whole bunch of other classes, and every one of those teachers think that their course is the most important thing in my life, and that I might want to do all these things for that too. So you might, good thing for announcements, because it just sits there. Students can see it or not, can take action on it or not, but you're not pushing it in their face or anything like that. And one of the things I've added here, a little red email button, and that is whenever you change something, you want to not only put it on the announcement page on Blackboard, but you want to email it to the students. And announcements let you do that. When you create the announcement, you get a choice whether to email it to all the students. So let's continue on. The process of creating announcements is really simple. Most classes in their course menu have announcements as the first item, because the announcements page, which is over here on the right, is the first thing that the students see. And that works really well. Some people have played with other home pages, and they can be effective and help the students in that, but I find the announcement as the #1 thing in this list, which means it's the page that students go to, and that is the default configuration of courses here at the University of Miami, that works best. So there is an announcement in the home page, and then there's an announcement page. Here's what test posted, and then there could be more announcements down below that. So to create an announcement is really easy. You go to the announcements page, click on announcements. You'll see that you're on the announcements page, and then you click on the create announcement button. Since you're the instructor of the course, you see these buttons to add information to a folder or whatever, and at the announcements page you see the create announcement button. That brings up the create announcement form, and it's real easy. You just fill it out. First thing you do is put the text in. Put in the subject, put in the text. This page looks a little different than ours because it's from another site, and I've actually got the site down here, USC. But and they were a few versions behind us in their content editor, but ours has 3 lines and lets you do all the mashups and all that kind of stuff. Anything you can do in any other item or anywhere else where you're in text, you can do in an announcement. You can change the color of the heading if you want to draw attention to it or something. But in general, you just type in the subject and you type in the text. And then you go down to the next section. The next section I call options. And this is where some people get confused. So we're going to talk through them. We're going to talk through what they mean and why you'd use them. The first one is duration, and it says not date restricted or date restricted. Not date restricted, it's going to go up as soon as you click submit, and it's going to stay up for the rest of the semester. Date restricted, it's going to go up after the time, which is always the current time. If you do click on date restricted, the current date and current time go into here. and then you just check the little box for display it after this time. That's the beginning time, now, and how long you want it displayed until. If you just want it displayed for a week, put the date a week later. You've got a little thing you can click here to bring up a calendar, and you've got a time that it will actually disappear on that date. So this is when the announcement appears and disappears. Most people don't use this, and I don't recommend it unless you've got something real specific, a very specific use for it. In general, you just want to use not date restricted. Down below it, we've got the email the announcement. This is neat. This means whatever you're putting on the blackboard will also get emailed to all your students. Now the wording on it is kind of confusing. And that's because students can set up their system so that they get announcements, they get emails when announcements are posted in their classes if they want to, or they can turn that off. And they can do it by class. So this overrides that and says, I want everybody to get an email on this. Don't overuse it. Use it whenever you change something, and if it's really important, the students get that announcement. An announcement that you're canceling class, probably worth email. Okay, then you've got a course link section, and this is if you're going to talk about something in the course, remind them that they have to submit their assignment or participate in a discussion board before class or something like that. You can actually include a link in the announcement to that item. You just click on Browse, and up comes your course outline, and you choose what you want. And then the all-important Submit button. That's it. That's all it takes to make an announcement. Now, if you've used Blackboard in the past, things have changed. Change is the one constant. So currently there are 4 methods of organizing the announcement. One is I want the announcement that I make visible all the time with the newest ones on top. Another way is I want the announcement available for a specified period of time, from when I say until it turns off. Next, I have a choice. Do I want the announcement emailed to the students? In addition to be placed on the announcement page on Blackboard, do I want it emailed to the students in the course? And finally, you can customize a display order. So where I said the most recent one comes on top, doesn't always have to be. You can have a display order that you change, and I'll show you how to do that. To make it visible all the time, with the most recent one on top, you set the duration to not date restricted. That's going to go on immediately. It won't turn off until you remove it or the semester is over. It's if the newest one comes on top, the old ones just get pushed down and they don't matter. And that's nice to use that, because even if the students have a question, you know, I know the teacher said such and such, but I don't remember exactly what date it was due or what was going to happen. They can go back to the announcements and scroll down until they find that announcement. Even if it has gone beyond the date of being relevant, it's still on there. And because it scrolls down and makes new room, you don't have to clean things up. It's not like a bulletin board where you've got so much space and you can only put so many things on it. You can put an infinite number. It just goes down forever. So visible all the time, most recent on top. This is the most common way of doing things, and that is not date restricted. Number 2. Visible for a specified period of time. I want it to come on Wednesday, and I want it to turn off on Thursday, something like that. Well, if you have something like that, and there aren't a lot of cases where you're going to have that, but if you have something like that, you set it to date restricted, you check the display after box, set the date and time. That's the start. That's when it will be displayed to the students. You check the display until box and provide a date and time, and that's when it will be hidden from the students. Now, in my case, when I was working on this, when I first checked date restricted, it put now for the date and time, and then it put 2 days later for the until. So take a look at it, make sure it's the date and time that you want. Please don't use 12 o'clock, because 12 a.m., 12 p.m. confuses people. Use 11:59 or 12:01 because we know what those are. And be sure to check both these boxes if you do use the date restricted. Third way of doing it, emailing to students in the course. Again, if it's an important announcement, email it to the students. Don't email all your announcements. They aren't that important. The students have other things going on, and you know what it's like to come to your email and have all of these messages in it, some of which you could have gotten somewhere else. So don't email them all, but when you do have an important one, check this box. Send a copy of this announcement immediately. That means when you submit it, in addition to having the announcement posted on the announcement page, it will also be emailed to the students. You may get some errors back because somebody might have their email, their Office 365 email being forwarded to Yahoo, and Yahoo may be full. Their Yahoo account might not be accepting anything else, and you might get an error message. That'll be from that student. The other students should all get the email. So even if you get one error, don't worry about it. Or even a few errors if you have a big class. And the fourth one is this customized display order. Now you don't do that from the form where you fill it out. You do that from the announcement page. And this is what an announcement page looks like. And when you're on that page, when you hover over an announcement, this bar shows up, and it's kind of hard to see here, I know, with two little arrows, a double arrow, I guess, at the top. And your cursor, when it's over that, turns into this position thing, a crossed arrow. And you can click and drag that up or down as you prefer. Now the new ones come in at the top, assuming that they don't have dates. Dates, I think, override that, but the new ones come in at the top, so it's normally that you've got an old one that you want to bring back to the top to have the students remember that this is happening and that it's important when they come to the announcements. Some guidelines for you. One of the things that helped me when I started using this kind of system was to find out what was expected and some kind of, remember, do this. Post at least one announcement every week. When the students come to your website, they want to see it look different. They want to see that you've been on it, that you've done something. Now, you may have posted some PowerPoint and done some stuff deep in the website, but they see the announcements first. So if you have at least one announcement a week, the students will know you're going to the site, you're working on it, you're aware of what's happening, and that will encourage them to go to the site and do things on it. Number two, I already talked about this, do not send all announcements via email. Students get enough email. If it's important, send them an email so that they'll be informed of it, particularly if it's time sensitive. But if it's not, just put it in the announcements area. And if students start complaining, and saying, I didn't know that you posted that there. Send them to us, Blackboard Help, and we'll show them how to set it up so that all of your announcements will send them an email. That was a default setting in Blackboard at one point, and everyone, students and instructors, complained bitterly that they were getting too much email. Everything that happened in the course site generated an email. So we backed off of that tremendously. Blackboard has, and our configuration does, so that students don't get emails by default every time something happens. So use it on important things, please. 3, put some bonus points in announcements. If you want the students to use the announcement page, if that's where the information is that they should go and check, they've got the syllabus, but now here's all this other stuff that they should stay up to date on. Put some bonus points in it. Before a test, the day before a test, put up an announcement with an answer to a question that may not have been covered in class. So-and-so invented such and such. If you know this, it might help you on the test. And then put that question on the test as a bonus point to reward the people who have done it, or give them some kind of an assignment or task to do, and if they do it, they get bonus points. Something just to reward them for going to the website and looking at the announcements and staying up to date with the announcements. If you want to use this, you have to encourage the students to use it. And one of the ways that you do that is with bonus points. Even 1 point out of a course that has thousands, students will work on it if they can get it. And this is one that is hard to do, and you don't want to, spoon feed the students, but do remind them of your policies and expectations. And use the announcements to do that. Just make an announcement that says, remember, you're only allowed to have so many absences from class, and for each one of those absences, you must do such and such, and any absences below that will affect your grade in the following way, if that's your policy. Right? Remember, when we take our test, if you take it home, correct the problems and turn it in, I will rescore the test and give you bonus points for that. Whatever your policies are, put it out there. If your policy is you're responsible for your education, go back and reread the syllabus now that we've had class for a couple months. That's a great reminder. Students are going through, college students are going through this time between high school and adulthood, and they need our help. And they don't need to be spoon-fed. We don't need to do everything for them, but reminding them is polite. Think of the students as your children. What would you remind them of and help them try to remember? And then use the announcements for that. I said to do 1 announcement every week. I don't know, what can I do an announcement on? Oh, let me remind them of something. That's an easy one. Or, how did class go this week? Oh, class went really well this week, and make an announcement about that. I was real happy with how much we covered. Just something that is communicating, that you're communicating with them. I talked about 4 kinds of announcements: the reminders, things that you changed. And these are important that you document, that you put in the announcements, and usually that you email to the students. Feedback to the students on the class and what's going on. And then some ideas, opportunities, recommendations, thoughts of other things that they might be interested in. The process of creating an announcement is exceedingly simple. Go to the announcements area, click on the Create Announcement box or button. Once you do that, you get to enter the subject and the announcement. Then you get to set the options, and most of the time it will be not date restricted, and everything else will be left the way it is unless it's a very important announcement, and then you'll click send a copy. And that's it. I really think announcements are underutilized in many cases. They are a great way to keep your site alive, to keep the students coming back to it, and it can really help your teaching in that when I used to teach, I used to have to keep a card in my pocket, and whenever I thought of something I needed to remind the students of, or something that had changed or whatever, I would have to write it on that card, and then when I walked into class, I'd take out that card and cover all those points that I needed to cover with them. You don't have to do that anymore. It's in the announcements. You may want to pull up the announcements at the beginning of class and look them over and read them, don't read them to them, but just go over the high points of each one, or ask if there are any questions about any of the announcements, because you're communicating in real time. You're putting it out there. They can go and get it when they want to, and everything is documented. It's all on the system. I really encourage you in creating a website for your class and working with your class to think about ways you could use the announcements more productively. Both the basics, just putting stuff up there, and beyond, reminding yourself once a week to put something up there, finding ways of talking about your expectations and policies, giving them feedback, doing more than just telling them you need your book on Thursday. So that should be up there too. So I hope you've gotten some ideas for ways to use the announcements. This has gone too long. I have to do the wave to turn my lights back on, and I'll hand this back to Brett. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Bill. Well, that wraps it up for this week. Join us next week for another topic, and thank you for listening.